mode.
Hello everyone, this is Victor Dominguez of Business Performance USA. I am the Executive Director of this nonprofit, but that's just a title because we have some wonderful partners and co-founders that work with me, and they're all equally responsible for our success, so I want to acknowledge Cynthia Stewart, Jeff Stewart, and of course Emily Shoup. Thank you for joining us today. Our topic today is, of course, coaching your employees. Specifically, what questions should you be asking to get the highest performance out of your staff? It could be employees, staff, volunteers, constituents, whomever, people that move your organization forward. And we want you to consider today that this is, in fact, a competitive advantage for you so that you can do more, serve more, accomplish more, and achieve more, no matter what your industry or organization operates in. And it's a competitive advantage because an organization can do more with the resources we have. We sometimes call that a return on resources rather than a return on investment. And of course, people, the good folks that show up to work and volunteer every day, are your number one resources. At least that's how we feel here today. So competitive advantage certainly is the case here, and we're talking about top-line growth and bottom-line preservation. That's almost a given. But we want you to think outside the box a little bit, too, in regards to what a well-coached organization can really accomplish. And, you know, we've noted some of the benefits of top-line growth, for instance. But think, for instance, what can happen when employees aren't coached well. And an example in the news recently is some of the tragic events that even occur in hospitals, in VA hospitals, for instance, where employees are afraid to speak up. They're not coached in an environment which is conducive to problem solving. And if that can happen in a hospital where patients' lives are literally at stake, imagine what can happen to an organization that's making rubber gaskets for engines, for instance. So well-coached individuals is really all about also creating your culture where people can see things and say things that they wouldn't normally in an uncoached environment. In other words, they can move your organization forward through their activities, and everyone can hold the candle up to your true purpose and mission. So that's just some food for thought there. We're going to move on. And of course, there I am, Victor Dominguez on the left, and Emily Shoup, of course, is the star today. And we want to make sure this event is worth your time. So please feel free to ask questions through the chat feature or the question features on your user interface. Whichever one is most intuitive for you, then simply use that tool. We monitor both of those. And largely, these webinars are wonderful, particularly Emily's. But we want you to follow up with us as well, and we'll give you Emily's contact information at the end of this webinar, and that's critical. So we want you to reach out to us. Sorry, I just got a note that my screen wasn't moving. Thank you for that. It should be operative now. And so in other words, this webinar will give you tips and tricks and help you take some steps today, but we want to make sure you can really move your organization forward. That's what business performance is about. We're here to collaborate and brainstorm with, so feel free to reach out to us. And mostly, let me tell you about Emily here. Emily Shoup is the owner of Shoup Training and Consulting. They're a training and business consulting firm. And Emily is one of our top performing speakers, if you will. She has well-attended webinars. She's also a speaker and coach and the creator of Central Illinois' premier team building event called Rally the Team, in addition to popular programs such as the Shoup Shift, 6 Gears to Rev Up Your Culture, Team, and Leadership. Emily is also the go-to leadership girl when you want to learn about how to maximize the efforts of your team in the right way so you can go from just being another manager to being an influential leader. Emily's clients are leaders who know that they have to get more done with less, and that pretty much describes everybody today. And that focusing on their company culture, employees will enable them to be successful. I know you'll find Emily insightful, engaging, energetic, and mostly she's there to help and assist and give back to our community. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Emily, and welcome once again. I'm going to switch over the slide to you, Emily. Sorry, I'm slacking here on the controls.
No
Emily,
worries.
there you go.
All right, everything looking awesome?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you for that great introduction and interesting story about the hospital. And, you know, that is scary. You do hear a lot of different things nowadays in the news of, you know, people making mistakes. And one of my clients right now is dealing with just getting people to understand how much a mistake can cost, and that really managers and leaders want to know if a mistake is happening sooner rather than later, because the cost of a mistake caught way early in the game is usually a lot less expensive than one that's caught after the fact, or it could be something that goes all the way to the client, and then once the client knows that there's a mistake, well, then you have a damaged reputation or other things that you're dealing with. So there's a lot going on with that. And so today I wanted to talk about coaching. It's kind of that time of year. It's basketball, getting down to the Final Four, go Wisconsin. Really, everybody's kind of focused on how well these teams are doing. And I find that in leadership in organizations, we get a lot of inspiration from watching how different teams perform, you know, in these elite events, if in the Super Bowl, in the Final Four. You know, what are these teams doing in order to be successful? And that is great. That it's inspiring. There's a lot of great quotes that are out there, and really gets you thinking about your team. But then a lot of people kind of turn and look around and say, yeah, but how do I apply that to my team? You know, we're trying to, like you said, build, you know, rubber gaskets. We're not trying to make a shot at the end of the game with the play clock counting down. We're trying to build stuff day in, day out. There's the monotony involved. There's or there could be, you know, our assignments change daily. There's not a lot of consistency. So how do you apply all that? And for me, it really comes down to coaching your employees. One of the things I like about leadership is that you get the opportunity to help people succeed. And so that's what we're going to go into today. And we've talked about it in the past, but I wanted to make sure that I shared it again here as well, is that coaching is how a manager and employee develop a partnership to understand what success looks like, what needs to be achieved, and how you're supposed to get there. And it's a partnership. It's working together to get to those results. So that's where coaching really comes in the workplace. And then the high performer, everybody always wants a high performance employee, whether they call it that or not. It's really along the lines of somebody who they can just trust to go get the work done and do something amazing with it. I was working with a client on a performance review, and explaining to them that, you know, I know that what you want to say is, well, if you could just keep on being awesome and then be more awesome next year, that would be great for a performance review, but that's really not that helpful. So we talked about these type of things where, you know, you're always learning, you're open to feedback, you make good decisions, and really pulled all that together for them. But the high performer pulls all of these together, and that's really what we want out of our employees, is to be performing at that high level. And so today we're going to talk about how coaching gets you there. So one of the things that's really important with coaching is that you should always be asking questions. There's questions that need to be asked on a regular basis, on an annual basis, on a daily basis, and there are questions that we think of, like, do you know what you're doing? Do you understand this project? Those type of things for clarity purposes. But when you're thinking about somebody that you're trying to get to perform at their highest level, the questions are different. And it's your job as the leader to ask these questions to get that out of the employees. So the first question, we're going to go through about a handful of questions here. But the first question I want you to ask your employees is, how do you define success? And that's something that a lot of people don't really think about, because as the leader, you know, you need to tell them what they need to do in order to be successful. But let's say you have an employee that you are enjoying the work that they're doing, you want them to stay around longer, so you need to start understanding how they define success. And it's interesting that a lot of people assume that just means that they need more money, that if I can pay them the most, then they'll always be really happy and really satisfied in their job. But there are a lot of studies that show that that's not really the case. For some people, success is around their job title. Other times it's around how many people they lead. So they could not have a raise or have a minimal raise, but then now have an assistant, and that would be a definition of success for them. Or they might have somebody that is newer in a position, and they get to teach them how to do their work, and that might be what success looks like for them. Some people, success looks like stability. You know, they know that their job is going to last for a long time. And other things are along the lines of variety. So knowing what your employee, what your high performer thinks defines as their own success will really help you figure out how to lead them in their process of being on your team. And Victor, have you seen that in action in your experience?
Yes, I have, and I'm chomping at the bit to talk about it. We also have a comment from our co-founder, Cynthia Stewart. I'm going to actually turn the floor over to her, however.
Ooh,
and
yay.
Cynthia, by the way, is managing partner of Evermore Services, our partner, our co-founder, wonderful person, and an expert in quality. And I'll just leave it at that. Cynthia, go ahead.
Yeah, I think this is really a great topic, especially with your lead-in, Victor. It's true that coaching is really an important part of what any manager or any leader does in an organization. And what is really interesting is that I was listening to a gentleman speak yesterday at an event I had organized. He put up those statistics that show that people are really dissatisfied generally with their jobs, number one, and number two, they're really not engaged. In fact, active disengagement, that is, they're doing things that are really difficult for the company, is higher, it's double what active engagement is. So coaching really is where helping people find satisfaction in their jobs and how to get engaged and how to make sure that they're really in the right jobs makes a difference. So one of the things that I know from statistics, also Emily, in this regard, is that people leave companies most often because of their supervisors. And they stay most often because of the people that they work with. Most people, if you say anything around what makes you happy on the job, usually they'll say it's the people. So what you're talking about in terms of success is right on when you're saying that it's not so much about the salary. Salary is a factor, but salary is more the draw that attracts people to the job. And beyond that, it has to do with their fulfillment on the job, being satisfied with the job, feeling encouraged and guided and coached by the person that they're working for, and also, you know, being mentored perhaps by others in the company. Those are some of the real ingredients for success on the job.
Right, and that's where the coaching piece is critical. And I like to say that, you know, if all else is the same, basically, if you're going to compare dollars for dollars, this job for that job, it's going to come down to how do I feel about the work that's being done, and that's where these coaching questions are going to help you as a leader have that person decide that they would rather stay with you than to make an extra $5 an hour or an extra 10 grand a year, however you want to look at it, because of all these pieces.
Emily, just thank you for that.
Okay, so the next question that sure.
I'll just make it real fast. The definition of success, each unit may have its own finite definitions of success, but I think it helps to have a broad global definition. And with our partners and our clients, we state something very simple like the ideal customer experience or the ideal patient care. That's something that everybody in the organization can relate to, and it gives everyone the authority to, when a process is happening, when something less than the ideal customer experience is taking place, somebody can step up and say, wait, this isn't right. We need to correct this right here, right now. And it's such a broad definition of success that everyone can understand it and intuitively relate to it. So just a quick thought.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely different levels of success that we want to be defining, and especially when you're coaching your employees, you want them to understand what success means for the organization, and then you as the leader want to understand the success, what success means to that individual within the parameters of this is what it means to be successful here. So our next question then is that you're going to ask your employees or your volunteers or whoever it may be that you're trying to engage to get work done is, what problems do you enjoy solving? There's a lot of times where we have problems as a leader that we delegate to our team. They're given to us by different avenues, either by other leadership, peers, or our clients, and we hand those off to our employees, and really problem solving is the best way to keep people engaged and invested in their roles. But there's also the side where you need to understand for your employee, what types of problems do they really enjoy solving. And so when I was a manager of a group of IT professionals, we had two very different types of problem solvers. There was the one that loved putting out fires and saving the day. So anytime there was something like that, nobody can get online, or we used to joke around a lot because people would say the internet is down. Like, really, the whole thing? But they like to come in and save the day. They like that high pressure, fast, whatever it takes to get the answer done. Get the answer and get everybody back online. But then we had other people that really enjoyed solving those bigger problems, like how are we going to add on a whole nother building with this whole other infrastructure in this tiny budget and make it all work and everybody be happy, or provide connectivity somewhere where you can't get any wires and wireless seems to die. They like to solve those type of bigger, slower, methodical problems. And so when you're coaching your employees, understanding what types of problems they like to solve helps you guide them in building their growth in your organization. So if you have that firefighter, you're going to seek out more opportunities for them to be a firefighter. If you have that methodical person, you're going to seek out those bigger projects that they can engage in.
Emily, that's good. We do have a question from the audience, and we do encourage, of course, people to ask questions via the question feature or the chat. This individual, I typically don't give out names unless if you want me to, I'm happy to, but I typically don't. This individual runs customer service, and this individual is new in this role, and she states that she's overwhelmed with problems every single day. That's sort of the nature of it. And so are you suggesting within her team that she develops experts, people with expertise, the go-to person, so she, I'm interpreting now, but catalogs the typical top 10 problems that come into customer service and develop experts, and then those calls are routed to that individual?
Yeah, and not necessarily by, and it could be by topic. So, if you're in customer service, there could be a certain, every time, the user has this type of problem, I really love rolling up my sleeves and solving it for them. But it could also be more the nature of it, like the urgency of it. Some people are slower and more methodical about coming up with a solution, and they really want to dig down into like the root cause of the problem. And so understanding for your team what they like best. Now, I understand that you can't, that wouldn't evenly distribute the workflow all the time, but the more time an individual can hang out in their sweet spot, the happier they will be over the long run. So if you have somebody who's like, give me all the fires, every fire you can, well, from time to time they're going to work on some other stuff. It's going to balance out. But if you know that, hey, this is a hot issue and Nick really loves those hot issues, we'll give them all, give them to Nick as much as he can handle, and work with it that way. And then it becomes a balance. Then they do the other work that kind of balances it out. But again, you're looking for your employees to give you feedback as their leader of what is the work that you really enjoy doing. Because if you say, on the lines of troubleshooting, well, that's kind of generic. What kind of troubleshooting? So, all right, well, if I'm in customer support, I enjoy helping the clients or helping the customers. Yeah, but what kind of help do you like doing? And we're looking at long-term how you can make their workload match what they like to do.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, that was a great question. Keep that kind of stuff
Exactly.
coming at us. Yep.
Go ahead, Emma.
Okay, so let's go on to the next slide here is, or the next question, sorry, is what do you expect of me? So we spend a lot of time, or we should, I hope you're spending a lot of time, let me rephrase that, explaining to your team what's expected of them so that they get really clear on that. But when you want to have a high performer and a highly engaged team member, you also want to know what they expect of you, because there might be things that they need you to be doing in order for them to be successful and in order for them to stay long term. And so let's say there's different ways that they want you to communicate with you, or different piece of information they need to share, or there's some training that they might need to get. What are their expectations of you? That way you know that you're giving them what they need in order to be successful. And what I've found is the more you ask this type of question, the more it gets them thinking about what they need in order to be really happy long-term in this organization. Now, if you say, well, what do you expect of me? I expect you to bring me coffee every day when I start my day. Well, then you can kind of manage their expectations of how that's not in your role. But I've also found where people will take it seriously and say, well, I would really expect that this would happen, and then you can say, okay, I see where that's coming from or where you're coming from, but given our current infrastructure, our clientele, or whatever the case may be, we actually can't do that, and here's why. So it helps people really get a lot more invested in how the organization works. It's a different way for people to understand, and it all comes from you as the leader saying, what do you expect of me as your leader?
So that expectation, Emily, then, if I hear you correctly, begins at the grassroots level, the individual level between employee and manager, but really then would be beneficial to expand into teams and into departments and inter-department cooperation and collaboration, and all the way up the chain and across the organization, because setting expectations for sales, for instance, and product and service delivery, everybody needs to be in line with the capacity of the organization and understand what is expected of each other, therefore what can be promised and what can be delivered. Would you agree?
Yeah, yes, I would. And for me, it all starts with you as the leader getting a better understanding of what your team members need from you, and then you can take it from there. And the better you get at asking that, the more clarity you have everywhere. If you asked your clients more often, what do you expect of me, you probably would have better results with them as well. But the one thing that I find is most leaders are thrown into their role without a lot of experience leading others, and it's usually because you're really good at the task at hand, at what the work that people are going to be doing. And so you want to take a step back and say, okay, now that I'm the leader, or as the leader of this group, what do you expect of me? And I know that I had situations where people really wanted their leader to be the buffer, like be the buffer between me and the other people so that I can just focus on what I'm doing. Or I expect you to be able to have the answers or back me up in a difficult conversation, or things like that. And so then that helps you figure out where you need to be focusing your time. Sometimes as leaders we focus on the wrong things, and if you know what your team is expecting of you, you can focus on the right things.
Thank you, Emily.
You're welcome. Okay, the next question is, what kind of team do you need? And this is not a question that most leaders take the time to ask each individual on your team. You kind of build out your team based on the skill set that you have and or the skill that you need to fill, or if you have somebody leave and you add somebody, or but there's a lot of tendency to, from the people skills side of thing, or from how people get work done, there's a tendency to fill a team full of people that are very similar to each other. And that actually causes more harm than good in the long run. And so if you can get the individuals thinking about what kind of team do you need to surround you to get your best work done, it can really help you hire the right people and train people to be a good cohesive team. Again, we're looking at it, you know, if we were a basketball team, what are all the positions that we need to play? And so this comes up when, if you're thinking about, you have somebody who is very detail-oriented and really is good at figuring out all the details, all the tasks, lining everything up in a row in order to get things done. Well, that's great, but if everybody did that, the probability of you getting your jobs done on time would be pretty slim, because they would be too caught up in the details. So you need somebody else to balance that and say, it's close enough, we need to move forward. So you kind of need that balance between fast and slow, and or really more aggressive or assertive and laid back, so that it kind of balances it out. I know for me, I need somebody who is on my team that will manage the details, because I like to stay at a higher level when I'm working on things. And then, but I'm also a big risk taker, so I need somebody who is more cautious, that'll help balance the team out. And the reason why I think it's important to make sure that you ask this is, one, to make sure that you're balancing out your team, but then two, you can take it to another level of coaching with your team members, in that understanding the differences with each other on the team and how valuable that is. There's a tendency for teams to think that they want everybody to, if the whole team was just like me, we'd be perfect. And that gives you the opportunity to say, well, no, it's really helpful that Sally does keep track of all those things so we don't forget and miss a step along the way. And no, it's good that Nick is out there and getting ahead of the game and finding that new, fresh technology. And while it may feel like a distraction from what you're working on, we need to know that next big thing. And so then it gives you the opportunity to coach on that well-roundedness and appreciation of your team, and that then gives you opportunities to coach on communication and other interpersonal skills. Have you seen that in action, Victor?
Yeah, I've seen all of that, and thank you for bringing it up. The thought on diversity or similarity of styles, I would encourage people to think of diversity in multiple terms, certainly in terms of how it's commonly thought of in terms of hiring and equal opportunity. That's essential, and to me, I wish it were obvious, but it's not always. That's one level of diversity, but I think the real key, the relevance of day-to-day diversity, once you have your team established, is diversity of thought, skills, and talents, and I'm glad you brought that up. That's where diversity comes into play. But I'm also looking at your question here, and it's sort of a conundrum for me, because typically employees or team members don't have the authority to form their own kind of team. They don't have the reason. There's always finite resources, and there's just not that luxury of saying, well, we need to add this person and that person. So what I suggest, and this is where coaching comes in, coach your employees to be the kind of employee, or peer is a better word, who is collaborative and cooperative and shares success, and likable and cooperative and accountable. And when employees have all of those skills, other people want to work with them, and that's when you can start creating virtual teams, because people do want to share, do want to lend a hand and pitch in. And I've seen employees, well-coached employees who are collaborative in spirit and cooperative, being able to form their own virtual teams kind of on the fly. They can ask favors from another department and but to do that, they have to build bridges and create relationships first. So in a sense, employees cannot build teams because they don't have the resources. In a sense, they can, because they can build bridges, create relationships, and, quote, ask favors among the organization to get work done.
Right. And it gives each individual an opportunity to really do some self-reflection and say, a little bit on what are my deficits, or what knowledge don't I have, or who do I need to really get this done, and it's not within myself, and that's okay. Either it's an opportunity for you to learn more, or, like you said, reach out and make the right relationships. And that's another thing that I'd like to go into at another time is how do you build those types of connections all over an organization and even outside of your organization.
Well, that's why people should
Okay.
contact you after this webinar, and we'll give you we'll give everyone your email address.
Oh, thank you so much. So then the last question that I wanted you to think about asking your team members is, what is the best way to help you grow? And this kind of is along the lines of feedback for your team and also keeping that level of engagement. So if people don't feel like they're growing in an organization, even if they don't want a job change, they need to feel like they're still growing in order to feel satisfied in an organization. And then most people, when I ask, do you want to know if you're not doing your job well, they say, absolutely, I want to know. I want that feedback. I want to know that I'm not performing to my manager's expectations. But then when you go to have that conversation with that person, they shut down, they put up a wall, there might be some tears involved. It really comes down to that person doesn't really want the feedback. And I know that there's times where I don't necessarily really want the feedback. I do, but I don't want to hear it. And it's the same for employees. We're all human. It's hard to hear that you're not doing everything perfectly. And so by asking your employees or your team members, what is the best way to help you grow, you get an insight into how can you get that information to them that they need in order for them to be coachable, to be a high performer. So if it's something where it could be along the lines of how they want to be communicated with, maybe somebody would prefer a long written out, kind of like an essay explaining something, and maybe somebody would prefer that that there's these kind of walking, talking opportunities to grow. Some people might like to be thrown into a situation where, I would really like to become a project lead, and then they learn best, by trial and error, and that's how they want to grow. So then you just throw them into that opportunity, whereas other people are like, well, if I'm deficient in a skill, I prefer to grow by taking a class. All those type of things. Some people prefer books versus audio versus video, all those types of things. But if you ask your employee, then the pressure is off of you to figure out how can I help this person develop and keep growing in their position. Because really the only way you know for sure that works is whatever works for yourself. And but that's not always going to translate to your employee, and so then a lot of times you get stuck and say, well, gee, I know that Sally really needs to nail this skill, and if she doesn't, she's not going to be growing anymore in this organization, and it might be a hindrance over time, but I don't know how to get her to learn that. And so you start by asking in a generic kind of conversation, and it opens the door for you to figure out, all right, so now that I have a situation, I know that Sally prefers to do the webinar series in order to learn. Have you seen that with the clients that you've worked with, Victor, where there's different ways people want to get different information and grow their skill set?
Yeah, I do. I have certainly. I'll make a quick comment because I'd also like to hear from Cynthia Stewart and give her the majority of time. My first comment is when I hear you talk about this, Emily, I think of the annual employee review, which in my observation is one of the most ineffective processes in an organization. My thought is that coaching should be the core component of your employee review system, and simple documentation goes a long ways. As you coach, document, and that is in fact your annual employee review, so you're compliant, but you're actually fulfilling the intent of the annual review, which is to help employees grow. But do it in real time, not on an annual basis. Set expectations in real time, not on an annual basis. That's the best way to help employees grow and make that moribund process of the annual review actually intended to what it could be. So quick thought, but I want to turn the floor over to Cynthia. Cynthia, take it away.
Yeah, I think these questions are great because you're getting at fit. And one of the reasons that I think people are dissatisfied and not engaged is because they're really not in a job that's a good fit for their skills is one possibility. Or maybe they do have a really bad supervisor. That can happen. I've experienced that. But I think as you get to fit, it's real important that people talk honestly about what they see as their strengths, what their goals, career goals are. All of those things help you define fit as well. So some of the questions that I like to use are, what are you most proud of? A lot of times people talking about what they're most proud of talks about a growth experience for them and talks about the kind of skills that they grew and the kind of strengths that they were able to bring to bear in that situation. So that's a great question to ask people, you know, what are you most proud of? And you can also ask the reverse question, which is, what are you least proud of? Or what do you wish had turned out differently? Which gets at perhaps, again, either the situation environment was wrong for them, or they just didn't have they were matched to a job that didn't really work for them. So those are just another couple of questions that I think help coaches make sure that when they're looking at fit, and coaches and supervisors, when they're looking at fit, they're really helping that person fit well to the job at hand. And if not, they should be helping them find the job where there's a better fit. So let me give a really quick story. There was this guy that spoke yesterday talked about a situation where they had somebody that was answering the phones who was on customer service. Come to find out, they discovered that the person was actually not answering the phone during periods of the day, certainly at the peak times when they should be answering the phones. And in further discussion, turned out the person hated being on the phone and answering all those customer service. So just an example of, boy, the wrong fit can cause problems. Certainly was causing problems for the customers that weren't getting served, and problems for the person that really wasn't up to the kind of demand that a customer service agent, call agent needs, you know, meets with every day. So the importance of fit can't be overstated.
Yeah, and that fit piece goes back to each of these questions helps you as a leader push back to your employees to have them do some digging and share with you. So you're not guessing whether or not this is a good fit. They're giving you information that helps you decide whether or not this is the right thing for them, if this opportunity that's available is the right thing. You know, if you knew that this, say that was a, if you had that conversation with that rep where it was what type of problems do you enjoy solving, you know, it probably would have come out that you didn't want to be solving problems on the spot with a client on the phone. You know, if that somehow some information along those lines you would have been able to cue on, and so then you would have known that that's not somebody you're going to put in that position. Or, you know, if somebody has they just do not like answering the phone. They really just want to work on a task at hand, and they want to solve a problem of getting something done over the course of the day. Like, I want to be able to produce something and see what I've created at the end of the day. Well, that person can't be interrupted 100 times during the day. They're not going to like that workflow. Okay. So we talked about a bunch of different questions here today, and the idea, again, is for you as the leaders to be really kind of turning the tables on your employees so that you can coach them. We know the value of coaching our teams, and we know that we enjoy being coached and helping us grow to do better in our roles. But I think sometimes we just don't even know where to start with employees other than on that discipline side of things of, well, that wasn't done correctly. And that's not really where you focus with coaching. You're focusing on, bigger picture moving forward type of stuff. And the reason why I picked these questions is because it hits on making sure that your employees are staying engaged as well. So you want them to become high performers, and then now that you have that high performer, you're going to want to keep them engaged so that they stay over the long haul. So we talked about defining success, and again, these are questions are that you're pointing back on them. We could go into how we do this as an organization or as a leader, but this is just a list of questions for you to ask your team members. What problems do you enjoy solving? So you're getting to know what type of venue is going to be right for them. What do you expect of me? Getting an idea of what they really need in order to be happy and to get their work done. What kind of team do you need, so you understand what kind of worker they are, what kind of people they enjoy being surrounded by, what kind of deficits there might be in the team or in skill set that could be filled, or ways to shuffle things around so that everybody's getting the most out of the team, and looking at opportunities to teach them how to be different, use different resources, and be resourceful. And then what is the best way to help you grow? So understanding how they best retain information and want to be approached with opportunities for growth, whether it be a new task, a new project, or a situation where they are lacking in a skill set and you need to help them grow through that process. Is there anything else, Victor or Cynthia, that you guys wanted to touch on before we wrap up?
Not at the moment. I think I'll just keep my powder dry for a second. We do encourage other questions, and our co-founders, Cynthia Stewart, Jeff Stewart, seem to be okay. So let's.
Everybody's good?
Up.
Okay. If there are not any other questions, I'm actually going to hand it back to you, Victor, to go ahead and wrap it up. If you have any further questions, or if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out, and I'm sure you'll touch on that as well, Victor.
Okay, thank you, Emily. And again, coaching, some people are familiar with it, others are not. I believe it's inherent in the role of a manager to coach. And I think it's one of the most rewarding aspects of working with other people, is to really see people blossom and see your team come together. But at the same time, it's intimidating. Where do you start? And it's also, frankly, intimidating because one needs to walk the talk. And to be a good coach, you need to model and exemplify the characteristics of all of these traits. So you will see your own career and satisfaction in your job grow immensely as you grow into your coaching role. And where do you begin? I really do encourage you just to start with those 5 questions that Emily is proposing. Sure, there's plenty more that you can do as a coach, but starting is the key. And I think you'll find that those 5 questions will start a robust dialogue that will be challenging at times. And because it's challenging, we want you to be able to reach out to us, and particularly Emily. You can see her contact information here. We are all essentially executive volunteers, and what we do here on this webinar is what we do with our clients as well. But we believe in giving back to our business communities. And so trust us when I say that Emily is a giver and she wants to help you. So contact with her. Start with those 5 questions. If you run into a bump or a hurdle, talk to her, ask her, or reach out to me, and I'll find resources, or I will work with you myself. That's the nature of Business Performance USA. So the next thing to do is start to take actions. Becoming a member is an important one, because that gives you direct access to me. I monitor the site almost all the time, and I'm always there to answer a question or to refer you to resources. Go to our website, businessperformanceusa.org, and look for the button in the right-hand corner with the bee on it, representing the worker bee, and become a member. It's free as always, and we're here to give back, and we want to share our success with you. Emily, thank you so much. You're wonderful as always, and thank you for giving back to our membership. I really appreciate it. We'll close it out, and this will be also recorded online for you to watch at your demand. Thank you again, everybody. Appreciate you joining us. As always, please reach out. Thank you. And closing out, folks.